Yes, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah. Welcome, time-span soul. Welcome to your destiny.
Hello everybody,
I
I'm Reaver, and I am altering the format.
Pray I don't alter it any further.
Soul Reaver 2 is the direct sequel to Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. It was released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2 and for the PC, and was remastered alongside its predecessor in 2024. Soul Reaver 2, being a direct sequel, starts pretty much right where Soul Reaver 1 ends. You play as the vampire, wraith, hybrid thing, Raziel, and your job is to hunt down and kill your former vampiric master Kain, who escaped your clutches at the very end of Soul Reaver 1. But throughout the game, you will discover that things aren't quite as simple as they seem, and that your real enemy might not be Kain, but rather might be someone or something far worse. A disclaimer, I played the 2024 remastered version of Soul Reaver 2 for this video, which I think is fair because it only updates the graphics of the game, and it also allows you to switch between the original and remastered graphics whenever you want. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into Soul Reaver 2. First and foremost, let's talk about the visuals. The visuals of Soul Reaver 2 are overall pretty good. They're about standard PlayStation 2 quality with a pretty strong art style. I personally love the overall look of the game, and I think the game has a strong vibe and atmosphere to it. However, I will say the swamp level is a bit too dark in my opinion, and I think it would probably benefit from being brightened up a little bit, or maybe, some extra light sources being thrown in here and there throughout it. And before I move on, I do want to praise this game's enemy design, specifically the demon enemies you start to encounter about halfway through the game. They look phenomenal and delightfully otherworldly. I love their design. When it comes to the game's sound design, I only really have one complaint, and that is that some enemies' voice lines are just way too quiet, to the point where if I didn't have subtitles on, I wouldn't have been able to understand what the fuck they were saying at all. But other than that, the sound effects in this game are alright. They're nothing to write home about, but I also don't have any real complaints about them at the same time. I also really want to take some time to praise the voice acting in this game because it is absolutely incredible. The whole cast did an amazing job. In fact, the voice acting was so good that the major reason I wanted to continue playing was just to hear more of it. It was absolutely way ahead of its time, and it made all of the game's various monologues and dialogues super enjoyable for me. Now, I have many thoughts about Soul Reaver 2's gameplay, most of which are kind of negative. See, Soul Reaver 1 was very much a puzzle game, to the point where even combat itself was a puzzle that you had to use the various tools in your environment to solve. However, Soul Reaver 2 has a hack-and-slash style system, but one that's less Devil May Cry and more Blood Omen. It's very tedious and unsatisfying, or at least I found it to be so. I mean, sure, it's a lot deeper than Soul Reaver 1's combat, but enemy attacks are often not very well telegraphed, hitboxes can be a bit wonky, and your attacks tend to feel just very anemic. Overall, the combat of Soul Reaver 2 is not great, and while I have definitely seen worse, it certainly isn't particularly good either. Another big complaint I have is that throughout the game, you will have to traverse the same levels over and over again to the point where it just becomes extremely boring. Oh, and one more thing. At the very end of the game, there is a section where you are given infinite health and have to face multiple pseudo-boss fights back to back. Now, I assume this was supposed to be a sort of big power fantasy moment, but due to the very anemic combat system, it just ends up being a very tedious segment that really overstays its welcome. But, despite all of that negativity, there is one thing I can wholeheartedly praise about this game, and that is the puzzle design, which, just like Soul Reaver 1, is fantastic. The puzzle segments of this game are always complex enough to be interesting, but never too complex to the point of frustration. Plus, they do a really good job of blending all of the game's various mechanics together in engaging ways, something that many other games seem to struggle with. Now, the story of Soul Reaver 2 is definitely its strong suit, and the absolute highlight of this game. I don't want to spoil too much, but to summarize, after Soul Reaver 1, Kain uses what's basically a time machine to travel to Nosgoth's past, and Raziel makes chase. Afterwards, Raziel is confronted by the time streamer Mobius, a relatively important character from Blood Omen that also plays a major role in this game as well. Mobius tries to manipulate Raziel, but to no avail. Raziel then confronts Kain once more. They have one hell of a philosophical debate, and one of the best dialogues in gaming history. Afterwards, Raziel decides to stop hunting Kain, and instead decides to go time traveling to find out more about his past and what fate has in store for him. The story is beautifully written, and it explores themes of time travel, alternate timelines, fate, and free will. It has some of the best writing in gaming history and absolutely phenomenal voice acting to boot. The story of this game really elevates it from what would otherwise be a very mid hack and slash to a pretty memorable game, which is unfortunately a step down from its predecessor. In conclusion, Soul Reaver 2 is a game with incredible voice acting, a phenomenal story, and really solid puzzle design, but is also unfortunately lacking in the gameplay department. And while I'm glad that I've gotten to experience it, I doubt that I'm ever gonna play it again. If you have played Soul Reaver 1 or are interested in playing Soul Reaver 1, I do recommend that you play this game as well. Otherwise, I would say maybe look into Soul Reaver 1, and if you decide that you do want to play it, you should probably play this game as well. Otherwise, you can skip this one. Now, if I had to rate this game on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate it 7.5 Soul Reavers out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it, share your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more videos. Next time we will be discussing Blood Omen 2, so see you then.